A pipe-laying vessel has arrived in the scene where the submersible went missing on an expedition to the wreckage of the Titanic. With less than 50 hours of oxygen remaining for the 5 on board, the US Coast Guard says that it's expanding its search into deeper waters. What is happening right now is terrifying, terrible, but also gripping. We are either going to witness the greatest rescue operation of all time, or very, very sadly, the Titanic will claim more lives. Paul Hawking reports.
Roughly the size of a transit van, Titan went missing with 96 hours of oxygen on board and 5 men. Pakistani businessman and Prince's Trust International advisor Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman. Hamish Harding, a British businessman and explorer. 73-year-old Paul-Henri Nargeolet, known as Mr. Titanic, a French explorer who first visited the wreckage in 1987. And this man, Stockton Rush, the chief executive of OceanGate, the company that owns the submersible.
Out here, this is really focused on one thing, and that's the pressure vessel, and making sure that that component, which is clearly the most critical component of the sub, is safe and capable of handling depths down to 4,000 meters repeatedly with people on board.
Although Titan went missing 435 miles off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada, the joint US and Canadian search and rescue operation is being coordinated from Boston. It takes roughly 2 hours to reach the Titanic, which is 2.3 miles down. Communication on Sunday was lost after 1 hour and 45 minutes, suggesting it's somewhere near the bottom. As the world's only 5-man submersible capable of reaching the wreck of the Titanic, there are a few other vessels that can reach those depths, where the pressure is 200 times those of a car tyre.
There's all the other wreckage from the Titanic around there as well, which will send back signals. So it won't be so much a case of looking for it if it's at the bottom, it'll be a case of listening for it. So they've got sonar boys down there, and they'll be hoping that the crew will be able to create some sound, and they'll be able to hear that.
Since launching their 8-day expeditions to the Titanic in 2021, OceanGate have been charging £195,000 for a place on Titan. The sub itself is made from titanium and filament wound carbon fibre, with a loo inside, plus a battery of cameras, lights and scanners, piloted by an actual PlayStation controller. As this picture shows from a previous trip, there are no seats. Hamish Harding, the British businessman and explorer, is one of those on board.
Hamish is no stranger to being in a submersible. He has dove down to the deepest point on planet Earth and spent the longest amount of time that any human has at the bottom of the planet. So I feel confident that Hamish is calm and collective, and he's an asset to the team in the rescue mission if they have to self-rescue.
Most experts agree the sub is likely to be either on the surface waiting to be spotted or on the bottom. If it's the latter, then the sense of urgency is even greater. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
We will be all over this story, of course, as it develops. And I believe that, Paul, there have been a few little developments in the last few minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, so they've widened the search area and they've deepened the search area. They've brought in a pipe-laying vessel, and it's got 2 ROVs, remote-operated vehicles with it, that can go to the bottom to look for this. So this is a huge coordinated operation. You've got the US Coast Guard and military, the Canadian Coast Guard and military, and because this is the only 5-man submarine that can reach those depths, there aren't many pieces of equipment that can get down there to do the job that's needed. And there's only going to be one of two ways. There's only 2 possibilities that most experts agree on. Either it's near the bottom or on the bottom, or it's floating at the top. Now, if it's floating on the top, you would have thought they would have spotted it by now. Although the search area is so huge, it's the size of a transit van, it would still be plausible to miss it, right? If it's on the bottom, there's only 2 other things you can do. You can free it from whatever it's attached to, whatever it's got snagged on, and it's not just the wreck of the Titanic that's on the bottom, there's all the debris that surrounds it. Or you can, if there are motorised arms, you can try to robotically, because remember, you can't send people down in these vehicles. Of course. Robotically, you would try to free it from whatever it's in, and then it comes back to the surface. But obviously you can't, this isn't, they can't exit the submersible because the pressure down there is 400 times what we're experiencing at the moment, 200 times that of a car tyre. It would crush them instantly.
It's just terrifying, isn't it? It's absolutely terrifying. And, I mean, have the families been talking at all? 'Cause, I mean, it must be absolutely terrible for them.
Yeah, so there are 5 people inside this submersible. One of them is Pakistani businessman. He lives in the UK. He's been living in the UK for a long time. Shahzada Darwood, his son, 19-year-old son, Suleiman, is with them. They're the only people that have no submersible experience. So for them, this will be particularly frightening, given there's around 50 hours of oxygen left. You don't want to be panicking, so they'll be trying to keep their breathing down. Shahzada Darwood works for the Engro Corporation. They've issued a statement saying they're praying for the swift and safe return. He's also an advisor to the Prince's Trust International, who've said they are shocked by the awful news. Hamish Harding, the British businessman and explorer, no other person on Earth has spent longer at the bottom of the ocean. He spent 36 hours at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and you can't go any deeper than that. His aircraft firm, Action Aviation, have said they've put out a statement on behalf of the family saying they're very grateful for all the kind messages of concern and support. They're saying they're extremely proud of Hamish and looking forward to welcoming him home. The other person down there, very interesting, his nickname is Mr. Titanic because he's been down to the wreckage so many times. He's 73 years old. He's a Frenchman called Paul-Henri Nagiolet, and he first visited the wreckage of the Titanic in 1987. And then the CEO of the company, who I would assume is piloting the craft, because it's one pilot plus 4 passengers. That's the man we heard from in that report, Stockton Rush. He's also down there as well.
So as it stands, in terms of what might have gone wrong, obviously we don't know yet, but it could well be tangled in some of the wreckage there. There could have been a power failure. There could be an error with the communication system. I mean, it really is a mystery. But as you said, the clock is ticking, isn't it, at the moment? Because there's around 50 hours left of oxygen. Of
oxygen, yeah, exactly. And I mean, they've deployed sonar buoys as well, which sit on the surface and then emit sonar to the bottom. The problem is when you've got, I mean, effectively, if you've got a flat surface on the bottom of the ocean and there's a vehicle on top of it, when you get a different sonar reading that comes back, there's something there. But when you've got a seabed that's full of debris and the surface is like this, you may not be. It makes it much easier to spot something sitting amongst it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's much harder when you're using sonar equipment. But there's also no signal. Often with sea rescues, there's a signal that's just deployed. The search and rescue teams can follow that signal, but there's no signal here. So they're literally and metaphorically searching in the dark at the moment, and they just need as many pieces of equipment as they can find. Pieces of equipment that can reach that depth.
And it's very few people who would actually necessarily want to do this, very few people who would be able to afford to do this. It's around $250,000 per trip, isn't it, in order to be able to just go down and see the Titanic. And it's not a particularly luxurious craft by any means, is it? It's a smallish craft, really, with not a lot of places to sit. It's only got one window, I think.
Yeah, well, when you say no, there's nowhere to sit, there's no seats. It's literally the size of a transit van, circular in nature. There's kind of bits bolted onto it, and it's piloted using a video games controller.
This is the thing.
There's been some reporters have spent time on the on the Titan, and there's video circulating, and you can see the guy, the CEO that's down there at the moment, showing them the video game controller that they're using, and there's kind of, we've got this bit of equipment from Camp World and this bit from here. That's not to say that I mean, this is a remarkable feat of engineering, because when we talk about the bottom of the ocean, you're effectively talking about somewhere that's as close to space as can be in terms of the pressure, the environment, the darkness, the lack of oxygen. And so this is right at the cutting edge of technology. So in building the Titan, they're kind of exploring it as they go along. And I am told that when you go aboard the Titan, you go across, when you board a lot of these submersibles, you are made to sign waivers.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean,
It's not covered by your basic travel insurance.
No, it's certainly not covered by your basic travel insurance, for good reason. So, as it currently stands, there are massive search operations underway on the top of the water, firing down sonar things in order to try to get them to ping something back. There will be a look for them on the top. If they're right at the very bottom, hopefully some of these kind of robot equipments can maybe free them at some point, but that's...
If they can find them.
If they can find them.
Searching in the dark.
It does bring back some really, really, really shocking memories of things like the Kursk disaster from Russia, for example, and other submarine disasters. But we will obviously be keeping you right up to date on this. As I said before, it will either be the greatest rescue operation of all time, quite possibly, or sadly, the Titanic will have claimed more lives. Look, Paul, thank you very much. As ever, Paul Hawkins there. Like I said, we will be keeping you right up to date. Expect some breaking news on that throughout the course of the show, given the scale of the search operation and that time pressure as well. Loads more on that story on our website, gbnews.com, which is, in case you didn't already know, the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got the best analysis and opinion and the latest breaking news.